In this next clip, we're going to watch the Young Turks' Cenk Uygur go head-to-head with Randy Fine, a hardcore pro-Israel commentator who has made some absolutely outrageous statements, including calling for Zohan Mamani to be deported. During this exchange, you'll also hear him say some deeply offensive remarks about Muslims, and even about Cenk himself. Just a quick note, there's an ad break that plays partway through the segment, but I'll be skipping over that so we can focus entirely on their debate. Let's get right into it.
I do. Look, I think Mamdani lied in his naturalization application. He did not share he was a member of DSA. He did not share his affiliation and his love for the five Muslim terrorists. And I think that was dishonest. And I don't think he should be a citizen. I think that needs to be investigated, as we need to do for many people who've come in over the last 30 years. One of the most fascinating things about this election in New York is Mamdani is losing overwhelmingly among those who were born in the United States. His only chance of becoming mayor is because of those who grew up with values other than being American. And I think that's something that should alarm everyone.
But the way you phrase that, if I can pick you up on that, what do you mean? I mean, you have to be born in America to be an American. Is that your position?
No, but by the way, there's a reason the framers of our Constitution said that to be president of the United States, you had to be born here. There is something about growing up here, going through your childhood, being inculcated with American values, becoming part of that melting pot that made America great. When my family came here over 100 years ago, they came here because they loved America, not because they wanted to change it. They wanted to become part of the American social fabric. But what you see in New York is people who have come here not to become part of America, but to change America. And there's nothing wrong with America, and there's nothing that fundamentally needs to be changed. This is the greatest country in the history of the world, and we have too many people coming here who do not believe that, starting with Mamdani himself.
You said yesterday that Cenk Uygur, one of our panelists today, is an invader. What did you mean by that?
I think it's a great example. I actually talked in that post about Mamdani. I talked about Ilhan Omar. I talked about the gentleman you recognize. These are all wealthy foreigners who moved to the United States and then constantly talk about how bad it is. He made a post saying, I should be deported to Israel, that I have dual loyalty. My family's from America. I was born here. My parents were born here. Most of my grandparents were born here. My relatives that came here over 100 years ago came because they were desperate to be part of the greatest country in the history of the world. They did not come and then go on constantly about how bad it is and about how terrible it is and about how things need to change. If folks want to come to America, they should love it, they should share its values, and they should want to add value immediately. And far too many people who are coming do not share those values, and I believe it is a threat. The barbarians are no longer at the gate. They are now inside.
Wow. So you're calling Cenk Uygur a barbarian. Well, given he's here, let me bring him into this. Cenk, what is your response to that?
Yeah, no, I don't mind, because I agree that there are barbarians inside the gate, and that's Randy Fine. Randy Fine is a sick terrorist sympathizer. In fact, if he wants America to do terrorism on Israel's behalf, he has said we should nuke Gaza. That's killing millions of innocent children and human beings and civilians, but he doesn't care. He only cares about Israeli lives. By the way, the Israelis have murdered now nearly a dozen Americans in the West Bank. No accountability from our government. And people like Randy Fine say we owe Israel. We owe Israel a genocide. We owe Israel $300 billion. We owe them no accountability at all when they kill American citizens. They had a pervert Israeli government official that came here in Vegas and tried to rape our children, and we let him go? That's insane. Randy Fine, are you asking for the sick Israeli government to return the pedophile so he could face justice here? No, Randy Fine represents Israel, not America. Everybody knows that. He also said we should starve all the Gazans. So he's right. There's a sickness inside our government. AIPAC and the Israeli lobby have given to 90% of Congress. They've given him $500,000, and that was a giant waste because he works for Israel already. So, Randy, we're all sick of your terrorist sympathies towards Israel. They have committed 75 October 7th. Their civilian kill ratio is 83%, worse than Hamas, worse than any terrorist organization. They have murdered 256 journalists, more than all other conflicts combined. They murdered 104 people today, including 46 children. They burned them alive. And we're sick of Israeli terrorism, and we're sick of people like you forcing good Americans. I love this country. I didn't come here to be a occupied territory of Israel. I came here because I love America and the freedom and the equality and the justice that comes with it. If you think your grandparents who came here were not loyal to America, that's your business. But no, most of the people that come here come because we absolutely love this country and not Israel. Why don't you go to the Knesset, brother? Everybody knows you love Israel and you despise Palestinians and you love Israeli terrorism. Why don't you move to Tel Aviv already?
Okay. All right, Cenk. Let Randy Fine respond. Randy.
Well, thank you, Piers, and thank you for the surprise debate. I actually enjoy that. Look, there's a concept in Islam called taqiyya where you're allowed to lie in advance of your political views. And you just got a great crash course. All of those things were nonsense. But the notion that I am more loyal to Israel than I am the United States is part of it. Israel is fighting a war of civilization on our behalf. The reason we need a Jewish state of Israel is because of the Muslims that surround it. And so I stand with Israel because I believe Israel is fighting the same fight that we have here in the United States, the same fight that people like Mandami and Cenk, wealthy Muslims who move here in order to change the complex and the nature of our country, are going to do it. And I won't apologize for that. I am very proud of my views. I'm very proud of my faith. I'm proud to be the first member of Congress in the history of the United States to wear a yarmulke, which you may be able to see on my head. And I know that drives them crazy because we're not supposed to do that. But they gave me the nickname the Hebrew Hammer for a reason, and I'm not going to be afraid to use it.
But Randy Fine, when you said I don't give a shit, hang on, Cenk. Randy Fine, when you said I don't give a shit about Gazans, were you proud of that statement?
Well, I think the context there is Gaza attacked Israel on October 7th. Of the thousands of people who streamed across the border to kill every man, woman, and child that they could, many of them, thousands of them, were not, quote unquote, card-carrying members of Hamas. And so when you start a war and you are losing the war, if you do not like what that is doing to you, then you surrender in that war. Gaza chose to be the enemy. Gaza chose to attack Western civilization. And no, I didn't care what happened. It was my view that if they didn't like it, they needed to surrender. Something, by the way, they still haven't done, because yesterday the Gazans killed another IDF soldier in a place that even under the peace deal, they are allowed to be.
Why do you call them?
I don't care historically about the Germans.
Randy Fine, but I've not had actually any guests. I have to be honest here. I've not had any guest who has used the phrase Gazans rather than Hamas, given it was specifically Hamas that perpetrated the appalling terror attacks on October the 7th. It is Hamas that has the governmental power still in Gaza. It's not the Gazan people. It's not the civilian population. So why are you deliberately conflating Gazans in totality with Hamas when Hamas numbers may be 40, 50,000 maximum out of 2 million? Data brokers track everything you do.
Because that is a propaganda lie. I'll give you 2 points. Number one, thousands of the people who streamed across the border on October 7th were not members of Hamas. That has been well established. Thousands of people came across the border who were so-called civilians. And second, polling just came out today. That said if an election were held in Gaza today, Hamas would win overwhelmingly. Does that mean every Gazan supports Hamas? No, it does not. But to try to differentiate the two attempts to imply that some small percentage of Gazans support or like Hamas, that is not what the data suggests. And we should not allow us to say these two are completely different, Gazans and Hamas, because they are not.
All right. So Randy Fine. So when, for example, the United States, along with my country, the United Kingdom, and others, waged what many believe to have been an illegal war against Iraq in 2003, with the catastrophic consequences of 1 million deaths, the rise of ISIS, and so on. Is your position then that in that circumstance, every single civilian American is equally culpable to the military that waged that illegal war, and therefore any repercussions against any Americans on mainland America would be justified. Because that's what you're saying.
No, it's not what I'm saying. But I would note in the war that Israel has fought against Gaza, the percentage of civilians who have died versus the percentage of combatants is far lower than we saw in that war. Yet the outrage perpetrated against Israel in a war where almost 1,000 IDF soldiers have died in order to minimize the casualties in Gaza. If Israel had wanted to wipe Gaza off the map, it could have done that, but it didn't because it wanted to minimize the death that was over there. The only difference between Gaza and Israel is Israel has the capability to do what it is accused of and chooses not to. Gaza does not have the capability to execute the genocide that it wants to because Israel stops it. That is the fundamental difference between the two sides.
All right, Cenk, your final response before we let Randy Fine go.
Yeah, so as you've seen, he's constantly referring to the Muslims that surround Israel. They're the real problem. It's open bigotry. He's not even hiding it. And then he'll go and hide behind the human shields of good, innocent Jewish Americans and say, oh, no, if you criticize Israel, you're actually criticizing Jewish Americans, which no one did. It's the dirtiest trick in the using the anti-Semitism card to protect his form of terrorism that he supports, which Jewish Americans do not support. And so he says it's okay to kill the Gazans, which is collective punishment. He's not only said to nuke them and starve them, but he just said it right here on this air. He's a deeply sick man who wants to put a moral stain on this country by forcing us to fund the genocide of the Palestinians. They have already done 75 October 7th, but it's never enough murder for Randy Fine. They've already killed a stadium full. Imagine 20,000 murdered children lit on fire. Their heads exploded. Israel did all of that. And Randy Fine is saying it's not enough. Americans, go work another shift because you got to send Israel more money to kill more Palestinian children and put that on America's soul. Don't listen to this guy. He doesn't believe in America. His whole point is to make sure that we fund his beloved Israel and their sick, disgusting terrorism.
Just call me a dirty
Israel
Jew.
is the largest terrorist entity.
Trot it out. Come on, just
nobody
do it.
said that. You're the only one who says it. You're the
so
sick, disgusting Muslim bigot.
Come on.
No one wants anti-Semitism. The only person who wants anti-Semitism is you because you want to hide behind it. You bring up your yarmulke when no one else did. No one minds your yarmulke except you brought it up as if like you're some sort of victim. You're the one who wants to nuke over 1 million people.
I'm not a victim at all.
You're not a victim.
I relish
you're a disgusting terrorist sympathizer.
Like you.
And you should not be inside the United States Congress. You are a stain on this country.
And all of your fellow invaders
you are trying to occupy America, so you steal our money
I was born here.
to send money over to Israel to steal Palestinian and Arab and Muslim land. And on top of that, here's one thing that's important is pro-Israel people like Randy Fine have spread hatred and fear of Muslims in this country my entire life. They have tried to get everyone to hate Muslims so that they could say, oh, look, now that Israel is defending Western civilization, you should murder all the Muslims and you should let Israel take all of their land because we are defending Western civilization. And then they have the audacity to complain about anti-Semitism.
Do you mind if I make one closing remark?
They are the biggest bigots in the country. This is a literally for mass murder.
Randy. Yeah. Okay, I just want to make it clear to viewers before you. Randy, I'll give you one final response because, to be fair to you, you did not know you would be engaging in a wider debate with other panelists. I decided to bring Cenk in because you called him a barbarian invading the United States. I think if you do that about a panel member, they're entitled to respond. He's now obviously responded angrily and passionately to you. I'll give you one last word back, and then we're going to move back to the panel.
I would note I did not do that on the show. You could have warned me in advance. But again, I don't mind having the debate. I would note this. If Islamophobia was the big issue that Cenk makes it out to be, Mamdani would not have had to lie and make up an aunt that did not exist, who was not in the United States, dealing with so-called Islamophobia after 9/11. If the problem was real, the stories would be endemic and they would be everywhere. So people need to not believe the nonsense. The fact of the matter is, if you hear someone yell Allahu Akbar walking down the street, you're probably going to take cover. Fear of Islam is rational. Doesn't mean all Muslims are bad. They are not. But this concern that many Americans have and that they have in your home country, it is real. And I thank you for having me on your show today. Happy to come back anytime.
This exchange between Cenk Uygur and Randy Fine is one of the most disturbing yet revealing moments I've seen on cable news in a long time. Because what you're witnessing here isn't just a heated argument. It's a microcosm of a much deeper sickness that's spread across the political landscape in the West. It's the normalization of bigotry under the disguise of patriotism. When you listen to Randy Fine speak, what you're hearing isn't just policy disagreement. It's open racism. It's Islamophobia dressed up as defending Western civilization. And he's not even trying to hide it. He's comfortable enough to go on live television and essentially say that Muslims who move to the United States are a threat, that immigrants who weren't born here can't truly be American, and that Gaza deserves to be punished collectively for Hamas's actions. That's not debate. That's hate speech in a suit. And that's what makes this moment so chilling. Because it's not happening in some fringe corner of the internet. It's on a mainstream platform. People like Randy Fine now feel completely emboldened to spew this kind of venom on national TV, confident that they'll face little to no pushback. Why? Because this brand of racism has been rebranded as tough talk, as telling it like it is, as standing with Israel. It's all been sanitized, and that's exactly how extremism spreads, slowly, quietly, through normalization. Cenk Uygur calls him out directly, and you can tell Cenk's had enough. He calls Fine a terrorist sympathizer, and honestly, that's not hyperbole. This is a man who has openly said Gaza should be nuked. That's not rhetoric. That's a genocidal statement. When you say you don't give a damn about Gazans, when you generalize an entire population of 2 million people as barbarians or terrorists, you're justifying the mass killing of civilians. You're dehumanizing them. And that's exactly what Randy Fine is doing here. Then he has the audacity to talk about American values. Think about that. He's sitting there saying he embodies American values while promoting collective punishment, religious discrimination, and blind loyalty to a foreign government. If that's not the definition of hypocrisy, I don't know what is. Because here's the thing. America's founding values are about freedom, equality, and religious liberty. The right to believe differently, the right to speak freely, the right to live without persecution. And yet Randy Fine is sitting there suggesting that Muslims, immigrants, and critics of Israel don't deserve those same rights. And this is where Cenk's point hits hardest. Randy Fine doesn't represent American values. He represents a movement that's put another nation's agenda ahead of America's interests. He's not America first. He's Israel first. And that's not anti-Semitic to say. That's just calling out political reality. Groups like AIPAC have poured money into American politics to ensure unwavering support for Israel, no matter what Israel does. And we've reached the point where questioning that loyalty automatically gets you branded as a bigot. Cenk calls it out perfectly. The weaponization of anti-Semitism. The deliberate tactic of using the very real history of Jewish persecution as a shield for the Israeli government's atrocities. And that's what people like Fine are doing. The moment anyone criticizes Israel's policies, they immediately cry anti-Semitism, even if the person criticizing is Jewish themselves. It's one of the dirtiest political tricks in the book, and it's worked for decades because most people are too afraid to push back. Now let's talk about Fine's comments about polling in Gaza. He smugly says that if an election were held today, most Gazans would vote for Hamas, as if that somehow justifies their suffering. And that's where his ignorance is on full display. Because of course people under siege, whose families have been bombed, starved and burned alive, would turn to the only group promising revenge. That's not love for Hamas. That's the psychology of survival. When you annihilate people's homes, destroy their schools, kill their children, and then seal them off from the world, what do you think happens? You radicalize them. You create more extremism, not less. This is what so many Western politicians fail to understand. Or maybe they just don't care. You cannot bomb your way to peace. Every missile dropped, every child killed, every city flattened breeds another generation of anger. Violence begets violence. The idea that genocide can somehow bring stability is not only morally bankrupt, it's strategically suicidal. And yet, people like Randy Fine keep repeating the same justification. Israel is fighting for civilization. That line right there exposes the colonial mindset at the root of all of this. Because when he says civilization, what he really means is Western civilization. He's placing Israel and the West on one side, and Muslims and Arabs on the other, as if they're opposing species, as if some people are civilized and others are not. It's the same justification used for centuries to excuse colonization, slavery, and apartheid. We are defending civilization. The irony is that he calls others barbarians while advocating for the complete destruction of Gaza. Tell me, what's more barbaric than that? It's not just happening in the US either. We're seeing this same pattern across the West, in the UK, in Europe, in Canada, where open Islamophobia is being sold as patriotism. The right has figured out that fear is the most effective political currency. You don't have to solve problems if you can convince people that their neighbors are the problem. But here's the truth. This movement isn't about protecting anyone. It's about control. It's about maintaining power by dividing people. By keeping Christians and Muslims, Jews and Arabs, immigrants and natives fighting each other, the people at the top, the Randy Fines of the world, get to keep their power unchallenged. So when Cenk unloads on him, when he calls him sick and exposes his hypocrisy, that's not just anger, that's moral outrage. It's the reaction of someone who's watched his entire faith and culture be vilified for decades by people who claim to represent freedom. It's righteous anger, and frankly, it's overdue. At the end of the day, this debate isn't just about Israel or Gaza. It's about who we are in the West. Are we a society that believes in equality and human rights for all people, or only for the ones who look, pray, and think like us? Because if we allow voices like Randy Fine's to dominate, then we've already lost the moral high ground we claim to stand on. Let's be honest. The people calling for peace, the ones demanding an end to collective punishment, the ones pleading for accountability, they're the true defenders of Western values, not the warmongers, not the bigots, not the hypocrites who preach morality while cheering on mass death. So yeah, this was one of the most heated and uncomfortable exchanges I've seen on television, but it was also one of the most important, because it ripped the mask off. It showed the world exactly how far we've fallen, and exactly who's cheering while we do.